Welcome to Business Insight. Our topic today is conquering technology. Our guest is Stever Robbins. He is an adjunct professor at Babson College. He's been involved with numerous startups, and he's the author of the new book, Get It Done, Guys, 9 Steps to Work Less and Do More. Stever, pleasure to have you with us, and that's quite a topic for a book.
Thank you. It is indeed.
What prompted you to write the book?
Oh, the story behind the book. There's the deep story, and then there's the shallow story. The deep story is that I was born with an obsessive-compulsive desire to make everything better. And wasn't actually born with it. When I was about 14, my mentor, who was a friend of mine's mother, who was a very successful businesswoman, she said, "Little Stever, if you take a notebook and every day you write down what you learned that day, over time you won't have to make the same mistakes twice." So I started doing this because I was young, I didn't know any better, and I kept doing it, and I kept doing it. And I ended up, it just became a habit in my life. At the end of the day, I would think about what I learned. Well, once you think about what you've learned, you think, gee, I could make it better next time. And I got in the habit of finding ways to do everything that I did, but better, faster, quicker, stronger, and preferably with less work, because I'm a real fan of reclining in hammocks, sipping fruit-flavored beverages. It's a theme in the book.
Well, today our topic is conquering technology.
Yes.
Back early days, when you thought about what technology was going to mean to you at some point in the future, what did you think of?
Okay, first of all, you don't know this. I've been techno immersed for longer than most people have ever heard of technology. I got my first internet account in 1976. And grew up with my social life online years before it was fashionable, I might add. And technology was a huge part of my life. And I assumed the whole time that technology was going to liberate us. We were going to be working shorter hours. We were going to have more time to do things that we considered meaningful, to spend time with our families and friends, etc., etc. And much to my shock and surprise, I am now convinced the technology has had exactly the opposite effect. That if it were not for technology, we would in fact be living much slower paced, more relaxed lives.
Tell us about your view of robots.
Robots! My view of robots was shaped by the Jetsons. I wanted Rosie the robot, and who would come zipping around my house. I thought my job was going to be pressing a button. It's funny because technology was supposed to do stuff for us, implication being that the freed up time, we would be living a life of leisure. And instead, what's happened is we bring robots in places. First of all, we don't have them on the personal level, except a little Roomba, which is a company started by a friend of mine, actually. We use robots in the industrial level, and we replace people with them. Now, since I haven't seen the people since they got replaced by robots, I am assuming that they're living on a tropical island in hammocks sipping fruit-flavored beverages, although I gather that that may not be an accurate assumption. And to get serious about that, it's interesting because what we do with robots, and this is the way our economy works, actually, is when there is a savings in time or in effort, we lay people off, and who benefits is the company in the form of higher profits or being more competitive, or however you want to frame it. But essentially what happens is that when we are in a role as employees, we are the victims of technology, not the beneficiaries. When we are in the role of shareholders or top managers of companies, then we benefit from technology. The problem is there's a lot more of us who are employees than there are who are shareholders or top managers. So as a result, overall, I think that a lot of this automation is decreasing the average quality of life in the form of putting downward pressure on wages and causing unemployment. And you need to be real careful about how we need to think these things through a little more systemically than we do, instead of just saying, automate everything we possibly can and life will be better. Because,
One thing that's been automated, most people think is good, that you've had some experience with, is handheld calendars.
Yes. I love my handheld calendar. I got a Palm Pilot back in the mid-90s, and suddenly I had my address book and my calendar and my to-do list all electronic. And I decided to do
Is this the same to-do list that you were writing every day? Did you still keep your...
It is, and in fact, this is why I write it every day. I decided to do a one-year experiment, and I was going to do all of my anything that could be done on my little handheld device, I would do. So address book, memo pad, calendar, and to-do list. I did all of them. I said, no paper in my life, and let me see if it works.
So
1 year.
You were the Palm Pilot model.
I was. 364 days into the 1 year experiment, I went out to a stationery store and I bought myself a month-at-a-glance calendar and a pad of paper to use for my to-do list. However, I kept the online address book, and the memo pad I started using for reference, not actually for active note-taking, but it's where I store reference information. What I found with the calendar is fabulously convenient, and I still use an online calendar, but in order for me to balance out my schedule, I need to be able to look at a month at a glance so that I can make sure I'm not scheduling 2 trips back to back, whereas with my handheld, I can only get details really on the 1 day at a glance view. So I kept doing things like scheduling an 8 a.m. meeting after getting in on a plane flight at 2 a.m. because one of those was on one day and then the other, and someone said, are you free at 8 a.m. on the 4th? And I would look and say yes. What I wouldn't realize was the flight on the 3rd. So calendar, I print out month at a glance, but I actually maintain it online.
I assume an iPad would solve that problem. How about an iPhone? Does their resolution enable one to look at a month at a glance? I
haven't seen the new ones. I haven't seen the iPhone 4. I still don't think it gives quite enough detail. Once it does, by the way, I'll be completely online. And I have nothing against the online version. It just needs to really be able to let me do the overview view. I have an iPod Touch that does not give month at a glance.
Maybe you'll get a small iPad, which
yes.
I assume that size could do it.
Well, it could, and we may talk about iPads in a bit.
Oh, well, go ahead. Let's talk now.
All right. You know, the thing that's so fabulously convenient is how portable it is. So I can take my work with me anywhere. Well, guess what? I used to be able to take my work with me anywhere back before we had laptops. It was called a notebook and a knapsack. And the thing that the notebook didn't have is it didn't have internet connectivity. What do you use internet connectivity for? You use it for email, you use it for surfing the web. I guarantee you, unless you have a research job, surfing the web is a distraction. So having that on your iPod is like saying, oh, I have a device whose sole function is to distract me. So real skeptical about that one. In terms of email, for most of us, email overload is one of the worst possible things. A, it's very frustrating. B, we let ourselves and our priorities be driven by our incoming email, not by any sort of thoughtful consideration of what do I have to do today. So in fact, I don't bring a laptop with me anywhere, even though I own one. And if I were to get an iPad, I would think very seriously about not bringing that with me, because those kinds of devices don't actually give me that much more power over a pad and paper, but they give me unlimited distraction and the illusion of productivity. And what I care about is actually getting things done, not feeling like I'm getting things done while I'm actually being distracted. And just one more quick thing on that too, which is the one thing that I can do much faster on those devices, on an iPad or a laptop, is write. So if I'm writing, I'll carry it with me, but then I will turn the network connection off. And
speaking of writing, you mentioned email. What do you do about email overload?
Valium. Kidding. Almost. I'm sure there are people for whom it isn't. I first experienced email overload with a boss who would send me over 100 emails a day. And I found that so nerve-wracking because every one of those emails contained a to-do item for me that I started having nightmares.
He was pretty productive to get that many out.
You know, to this day, I'm amazed that he, because I can't get that many out in one day. And I started to realize this was a huge problem. And it was a problem not because the things that he was sending weren't reasonable. It was a problem because, as I alluded to before, when you run your life according to email, if you read your emails in sequence in your inbox, what happens is your attention gets pulled from one issue to another issue to another issue, whatever the emails are about. The human brain is not good at that. The human brain is good at taking one topic and dealing with it, then taking another topic and dealing with it. So one of the ways that I deal with email now, for example, first of all, I never try to achieve inbox zero. The only scenario in which that is even conceivably a good idea is if every single one of the email messages in my inbox is guaranteed to be something that I need to act on. Otherwise, I'm wasting my time dealing at all with the emails that aren't relevant. So what I do is I make a list of the particular projects I'm working on for a given day. And then when I'm ready to work on that project, I just scan my inbox and pick out just the messages that have to deal with that project. It turns out that's much easier to do because since your brain is built to focus, you bring the project into your brain all at once and let your brain filter. And for reasons, again, I don't know why, but it's much easier to filter than it is to stop and triage. So I think, okay, today I have project X. It might involve zombies and Oreo ice cream cake, which you'll know about if you read my book. And let me just pull out the emails that are related to Project X. I can quickly see, oh, look, there's a message from Caroline. That's got to be about Project X because she doesn't even know about Project Y, and so on. And I can very quickly pull out just the things relevant to that project. Then I shut my email down and work.
How about responding? What's the most efficient, effective way to respond to emails?
Short, single sentences, all lowercase, no punctuation, and not a lot of sentences, like one. So someone writes you a 20-page email outlining a project, reply, yes. And do this on purpose. One, you want to train people not to expect a lot of detail from you because typing is slower than talking. So you don't want to, if it's going to be more than a couple paragraphs, it's almost certainly going to be more efficient for you to pick up the phone and just talk. Now, yes, you need to get good at not having a lot of small talk, but you just pick up the phone and say, Mary, wanted to respond to your email. Yes, I think the project is a great idea. Talk to you about it tomorrow. Okay, great, thanks, bye. Click. There's also a lot of stuff, a lot of other things. For example, when you're sending an email to someone else, summarize the message in the subject line. Don't describe the message. So here's an example. If your message is that this week's team meeting has been rescheduled to Wednesday at 3, don't have a subject line of team meeting, which is just describing what it's about. Have a subject line that says team meeting rescheduled, comma, now Wednesday at 3. So that way somebody scanning their inbox, if they just look at the subject lines, they can immediately know enough about the message to know whether they have to open it or whether they can just delete it unread.
And you mentioned some tools that I'm not sure everybody knows about in your book. Stationery, templates, signatures, macros.
Oh, yeah.
Can you kind of explain for people that don't really know what they are?
Sure. Again, typing is slow. So if you're doing a lot of email, you want your email to be as efficient and as streamlined as possible. First, know about your signature file. Your signature file is usually set inside your email program, and it's the stuff that gets added at the bottom of every message. I have my phone number, contact information in my signature. I also have a line that says, I only check email once a day. If it's an emergency, call me. So that way, if somebody writes me and I don't check email, they will call, presumably, if it's an emergency. I'm assuming people actually read that far. I don't know. There are also stationery. In most email programs, you can set up templates of messages. So if there's a message that you would normally send over and over, let's say somebody writes you and requests information. I was running a course a couple years ago where several of the students would write with the same question every time. You know, when is blah, 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 you know, going to be due or something. And I put together a template that said, you know, if you simply look in your course schedule or on the automated Blackboard bulletin board, as you will see, the date is listed there. And I put that in a template. When somebody would write, I would just click respond with template, and boom, they would get that message. The general purpose solution to that same thing is a program that lets you set up what are called text macros. And a text macro is where you type a short piece of text and it expands into something larger. On the Mac, there's a program called Text Expander that does that. And on Windows, there's a program called Macro Express. Those are the two that I've used on both of those platforms. And those are fabulous. So my sign-off, I have 3 or 4 sign-offs I usually used. Best wishes, comma, Stever. Cheers, comma, Stever. Thank you, comma, Stever. Sincerely, comma, Stever. And I rotate them because I don't want to just make that part of my signature because then people will always get the same thing and they'll think he doesn't care. So I have a macro. I type CH and hit return and it says cheers, comma, Stever. I type SSR, which stands for sincerely, Stever, and it expands into sincerely, comma, Stever. And I use that for my sign-offs. I use that for things like my phone number, for contact information, etc. And the macro programs that let me just type a few keystrokes and boom, I get the whole thing. Those are invaluable. Because
Are those in Windows in the word processing, or do you have to get that separately?
I use a separate program. You can do it. You can fake it in Word, but then it only applies while you're composing a Word document. You can fake it in Word by setting up an autocorrect text. Only instead of correcting a misspelling, you just have it correct the short word to become the long text.
You mentioned at the bottom, you say, I only check my email once every moon day or whatever. Please call.
Yes.
How about voicemail? Any suggestions on voicemail?
Voicemail. See, voicemail and email, there's kind of an interesting balance. Some places are voicemail heavy, some places are email heavy. My basic theory is that I want to create slight hurdles to people getting a hold of me, because then the people who actually have something that's important will jump the hurdle. The people who do not, who just are writing me because it's easier to ask me a question than to turn around and reach for the reference book that's behind them, or even worse, heaven forfend, they should leave their email program and go to a web browser and ask the question of Google before they bother me. Those people, I want it to be difficult for them to get a hold of me. So in my email, I say I only check email once a day, call me. In my voicemail, I say, well, actually, my voicemail currently, I say, come to me, because that's the one that very few people use with me. If I were in a place where voicemail were very common.
Come to me.
Oh, no, sorry. In my voicemail, I say, please leave a message. I will get right back to you. So in other words, email is the one that most people write. So that's where I have the hurdle. And the hurdle you have to jump over is call me instead. If someone's calling me, then I say on my voicemail, please leave a message. I want to hear from you. And as soon as I notice I have a message when I'm at a break, I'll pick it up and call them back. If you're someplace that is very voicemail intensive, I would suggest doing exactly the opposite. Have an outgoing voicemail message that says, I only pick this up once a day. If you really need to reach me quickly, text me or email me. And then what you're doing is having them jump over the hurdle in order to, by emailing you or texting you. I can't imagine that there are still organizations that are that voicemail intensive, but apparently there are. So if that's one of the ones you're in, for goodness sake, shunt people to anything else that causes them to have to stop and think, is this actually important, or am I just deferring my own problem by trying to foist it off on someone else?
And when you leave a message for somebody in their voicemail, how do you do that?
When I leave, here's the message. Hi, this is Stever Robbins, 617 phone number. Then I leave my message, and then I say, thank you, blah, blah, blah. Once again, this is Stever Robbins. Give my phone number. That's Stever Robbins' phone number. I leave it 3 times. Oh, wow. Once at the beginning, twice at the end. There's a reason for that. First of all, people often won't have a pencil the first time. So if you just leave it once, they're going to be scrambling. Second, voicemail systems often have either a replay the last 15 seconds or a replay from beginning. But for whatever reason, I've never used a voicemail system that has both of those. So by leaving my message at my phone number at the beginning and at the end, if someone doesn't catch it, they can quickly rehear just the phone number, either by clicking play from beginning or play last 15 seconds. And that way, I'm thinking of them. I'm making it really easy for someone to contact me, because if I'm leaving someone a voicemail or email, presumably I'm doing it because I want them to do something for me. So I want to make it real easy for them to do something for me.
What do you think of texting?
What do I think of texting? Yes, I'm as addicted to it as everyone else in our culture. Being addicted doesn't mean I think it's a good thing. It just means I'm addicted. I think that texting in many ways is the worst of all worlds. It gives the illusion of contact without actual contact. It does not give you enough to have any subtlety to your communication at all. You've got to cut everything down, kind of the bare minimum. It encourages bad grammar, bad spelling, bad everything, which when you're texting isn't a problem, but a lot of people carry those habits over to other places in their life, and that's bad because it makes them look stupid. And maybe 30 years from now it'll be the new norm, but at least right now it does not reflect well on somebody who's communicating in a professional context. And it's an interruption, just like so many other things, unless you just check it again at predefined times. So, you know, my bigger problem with texting actually is much deeper, which is that it turns out that people have abandoned planning in favor of coordinating. So you go someplace, and instead of saying to someone, I'll meet you at 3 o'clock in this place, you get there and then you both kind of text and try to find each other. And the problem with that is it actually hurts your ability to plan. It turns out your ability to plan, or at least to make maps and things like that, seem to be related to how often you do it. If you don't do it very often, your brain stops doing it. And I'm not a big fan of people not knowing how to plan, because that's how you get things done, by working less and doing more.
What do you think of texting in terms of impact on relationships?
Well, it used to be that two people would sit next to each other on TV and consider that quality time. So now two people sit next to each other texting other people and consider that quality time. I can't imagine why anyone would text when you can arrange to get together with someone in person, frankly. Texting, again, gives the illusion of contact, but you're not. You're typing into a piece of plastic. Like, you know, let me videotape you texting, and no matter what's going on in your brain and how fabulous you think it is, you're typing into a piece of plastic. I don't know about you, that's not my image of a great relationship.
I view it as communication rather than a relationship. But it's very good for conveying a little bit of information.
Yes. And if you already have a relationship with a person, it can be great for maintaining something. But I don't think you deepen relationships over text or email. And again, I went through this learning curve back in the late 70s, early 80s, where I had relationships that were via email, and then I actually finally met the people in person, and discovered, much to my extreme horror, that what might be a fabulous relationship when it's encapsulated in little text bites is so nothing like a face-to-face, person-to-person interaction.
Speaking of face, what do you think of Facebook?
See, that's a tough question, right? Because I have a huge Facebook presence, and I'm there all day, and I'm doing it for business. I'm well aware that my business, I'm trying to start a media career based on the book, and my business is establishing a relationship with a large number of people and being of service to them. Facebook makes that really easy. That is not, however, how the other 499 million people use it. They actually use it for relationships. I think it's great for keeping brief tabs on people you haven't seen in a long time. I've reconnected with a lot of my old high school friends. But I'll tell you something, as I talk about in the book, chapter 1 is called Work on Purpose, which basically means ask yourself why you're doing what you're doing. If I spend more than 5 or 6 minutes on Facebook, I have a little thing in my brain that says, why are you doing this when you could actually be having face-to-face conversation with somebody who you love and care about? And that thought is almost always enough to get me, you know, either I then go straight to the messages portion of Facebook and send someone a message and say, hey, you want to get together for lunch? I'll meet you in 5 minutes. Or I pick up the phone and do it. But Facebook, I believe, gives you the illusion that you're having personal interaction when you actually aren't. Right? All of these technologies are designed to trigger the parts of your brain that get satisfied. You know, human beings are hardwired social creatures. All of these technology things are being developed in a way that triggers the part of our brain that says, ooh, we're interacting, without actually providing interacting. Interacting happens face to face. That's how it works. And,
well, this is really entertaining as well as informative. I think people who want to get more or to read your book, I'll hold it up here and I'll have to read the title, Get It Done, Guys, 9 Steps to Work Less and Do More.
Yes.
I'm talking to Stever Robbins from Babson College. For Business Insight, I'm Peter Marx. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.